Welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome, fellow deplorables. Welcome, fellow rock dwellers. Welcome, all you hateful people who celebrate the president. Those are their words, not ours, but you're always welcome here on the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Sharron Engel, coming to you from the Conservative Commandos radio network, and joining me today is my co-host, the president and CEO of Frontiers of Freedom, George Landrith. George, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
It's great to be here. This is the place to be. It's where people who want to know what's actually happening show up, because the Conservative Commandos is reliable and awesome.
Well, I think you're right about that. And I'm really kind of disgusted with, maybe more so with the media than I have been. You know, we kind of are the alternative here. We're the alternative radio show, and we're the alternative TV show these days. We kind of try to open up topics that maybe nobody else wants to talk about, and certainly there's one they don't want to talk about now, and that is, who is this so-called whistleblower, this alleged whistleblower? We got a name, and that name has been circulated far and wide in Washington, D.C. They say everybody knows about it. All of the news outlets, including Fox, know his name. The president knows his name. Congress knows his name.
Except for Adam Schiff.
Well, maybe Adam Schiff more than others know his name.
Well, he worked with him, so yeah, I'm pretty sure Adam Schiff knows who he is.
So his name is Eric Ciaramella or Charmella. Some are saying Caramella, but anyway, that's his name, this alleged whistleblower. Why isn't anybody talking about it, George? Why won't they name the name?
Well, one, because they don't want him to testify at this point, because he doesn't have anything to say that's useful to them. What he would say would simply embarrass or harm the impeachment effort. The reason why I say it would harm it is because he didn't witness anything. You and I, and every one of our listeners who has bothered to read the transcript that has been provided, know every bit as much as he knew. In fact, more, because he just got, he heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from someone else, to quote REO Speedwagon. Rock band that's heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who. Anyhow, so that's, basically, this is crazy. This is not actually, you and I know more from about this, and we're more qualified to testify than the whistleblower is. And so they don't want him to testify anymore because it'd be embarrassing. He would just point out that he was working with Adam Schiff. He violated the law. When you're dealing with things that are classified, there's a very significant procedure that you go through. The procedure isn't that you go to a partisan hack on Capitol Hill. It's you go to certain people within the organization and you talk with them and you give them the information that you're concerned about. But he didn't have any information to give anybody there. That's why he didn't go to them. There's a reason why I went to Adam Schiff. Because he's like, well, I don't have, they would, at his own agency, they would have looked at him and said, dude, you're not a whistleblower and you don't have any information. You basically talked to somebody who told you things that they probably shouldn't have told you, because if they, did, they're releasing classified information to somebody who didn't need to know. And you didn't need to know. You're just, anyhow. So, I mean, this is a painfully stupid process. In terms of, so that's why they're not releasing his name, because it doesn't take them anywhere. They need for that part to go away. They've moved on. Adam Schiff has something else going on now, and he's over the whistleblower. So it's like, Sharron, stop talking with a whistleblower, because it doesn't help me any. If I were Adam Schiff, I have an agenda here. I want to harm the president, and the whistleblower story has kind of been blown up. So I want to move on. Stop. Sorry, you don't work for Adam Schiff, I know.
Kind of been blown up, but he's the whole reason, right? That's the whole reason that we're even talking about impeachment, is because of this whistleblower.
Right.
This Eric Ciarmella or Charmella, whatever you want to say, his name, is a mid-level bureaucrat, GS-13, and he's the reason. If he had not, if Adam Schiff had not had this whistleblower, we wouldn't even be talking about impeachment. We wouldn't be having these hearings, and yet. None of the news carriers want to talk about him. Fox News actually told all of their hosts and personalities that they couldn't mention this guy's name. Now, why would Fox buy into this whole let's protect the whistleblower scenario?
Yeah, I don't understand that, to be honest with you. It makes no sense to me. It's just stupidity because, let's be honest, there's no good reason to protect his name. Whistleblowers have the right to not be retaliated against, meaning they can't be fired. They can't be demoted because they're if they're a real whistleblower. But what they can be is you can know who they are. I've read the statute. There is no protection there, and you can't on anonymous sources. Try to remove a president. He has a constitutional right to face his accusers. They can't be anonymous. So this whole idea, we should protect his. It's like, no, you don't. I understand why we have rape shield laws where we don't embarrass women who are the victim of violent crime by, it's kind of it's a personal thing. We don't run around, putting their picture and name in the press. This is not that case. The statute does not provide for that. So when people say we need to protect his anonymity, they're full of garbage. That's not the law. That's not the standard. If you wish it were the standard, fine, then advocate a change in the law. But that's not where we are today.
Well, even Senator Rand Paul, who's not a real fan of the president's, he has never said that he was. I mean, he ran against him, in fact, and tried in that primary to be president himself. So here he has become a very staunch supporter of the president and had got up on stage at a Trump rally and said the fake news needs to talk about, needs to do their job.
Yeah,
and
do your job.
We all know the name of the whistleblower. The whistleblower needs to come forward as a material witness because he worked for Joe Biden at the same time Hunter Biden was getting money from corrupt oligarchs. That's what Rand Paul said at a Kentucky rally. So he's saying as a senator, we need to talk about this guy. This guy is relevant. Maybe the other guys aren't, but this guy is relevant.
Oh, absolutely. He is relevant. I agree. And I just don't understand the... I would take these guys a little more seriously if they hadn't been running through this litany of, day after the election, let's find some reason to impeach the guy. And then almost immediately jumping on this, for 2 years almost, Russian collusion. And then it turns out there is no Russian collusion. They have zip, nada, nothing. And then they immediately, they don't even retract any of their crazy statements. I mean, Adam Schiff told us he had the goods, that this president was guilty of actually, working with personally working with the Russians. Not just his campaign, not just people associated with him, but he was personally involved. That turned out to be the biggest lie on the planet. No apologies. The press doesn't hold him responsible. He gets to start with a clean slate the next day on new, stupid, crazy allegations. If I spent every day of my life telling you that, I'm trying to think of a team that hasn't won a World Series in many, many years. I'm trying to think now. It used to be the Washington Nationals, but they just won. But let's assume, they hadn't won one since, Washington hasn't had a World Series team since 1924. If I spent the last 90-some years telling you every year they were going to win, at what point would you just roll your eyes and say, George, you've been saying this for 90 years and it's never happened. Please close your mouth, go away, and we'll talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. And that's Adam Schiff. The difference is here, they finally did win a World Series, and Adam Schiff is not going to win a World Series.
Okay, so we both agree that this guy is kind of the hinge on which this impeachment is going forward. Adam Schiff says, I've got this undeniable evidence from this guy. He's a good source. He's a whistleblower. We have now debunked that many times over. This guy's no whistleblower. But his name is Eric Charmella, and in 2015, he started out as a CIA guy. He was, interestingly, specializing in Russia and the Ukraine. This is 2015, before the 2016, before all the Russian collusion stuff. This is a guy who works specializing in Russia and the Ukraine. He was detailed to a national security council from an agency that summer working under Susan Rice and the President Obama's national security advisor. He also worked closely with the former vice president, so Joe Biden. So now the plot thickens. He also is an invited guest of John Brennan and the former FBI director James Comey, and he goes to these places where middle-level bureaucrats don't go. They don't go to dinners and things like that with Susan Rice and James Comey and John Brennan. They don't do that. But this low-level GS-13 federal employee is unusual, and he's connected politically. So now he's running this thing, and by 2016 and 2017, he's a major player here. Of course, we want to talk to him. This is somebody that Adam Schiff also knows. And so it's kind of like that, they used to have a kind of a sitcom out there called West Wing or something like that. And this is that. This Charmella is that guy. In May of 2017, he went outside his chain of command. I mean, doesn't this guy get fired at some point? He and another co-worker send an email alerting another agency that Trump had happened to hold a meeting with Russian diplomats in the Oval Office the day they fired Comey. And that led to the Trump-Russia investigation. So he's right in the middle of all of this. Of course, this guy has some explaining to do, and I think he should be the Senate's first witness. If they're going to go through with this thing and have a true investigation, I think this guy's the top guy to be investigated. And with that, we got to go to a break. We are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network with a shout out to our stations in Tampa and the Villages, Florida, Macon, Georgia, Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Alexandria, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Long Beach, California. And I'm Sharron Angle. He's George Landrith, and we'll be right back to tell you about our three great guests after this break.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America. And get this, did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. And like all our shows, we are brought to you today by the First Amendment and protected by the Second Amendment. George, we have three great guests that are going to be talking with us today. Would you tell us all about them?
Absolutely. Well, we're going to lead off with former Congressman from the 10th Congressional District of Georgia. He's also a primary care physician. That's Dr. Paul Broun. And we'll talk with him about impeachment and kind of his take on what's going on in Washington right now, since he is a former member of the House of Representatives and knows a lot of these players. I'm sure that he'll have some interesting insights for us on what's really happening, what the real story is. We've also got on the slate Frank Vernuccio. Now, he is the editor-in-chief of New York Analysis and Policy and Government. And he's a co-host of a program called Vernuccio and Novak. And we're looking forward to talk to him about an article he's written. And it's about the what he refers to as kind of how politics has become increasingly uncivil. And not just uncivil, but basically we now have strayed away from the idea that that elections matter, and they only matter if you like the results. And so anyhow, I think it'll be again an interesting and timely conversation about what's going on in the world. And our last guest is Jonathan Miltimore. Now, he is the managing editor of Foundation for Economic Education. That's FEE.org, Foundation for Economic Education. And he's got a background in journalism, and he also used to be in the speechwriting department as an intern for George W. Bush. But we're going to talk about socialism and kind of why socialism doesn't work. And in history, an interesting story about an important event that exposed kind of just the poverty of socialism, how it doesn't work, and how it became so obvious to a Russian politician that socialism was bad for his people. So anyhow, I think those will be some very interesting conversations and worthwhile to, I just can't go wrong with those individuals or those topics.
That's right. And I guess, I can't stop thinking about this guy, this Eric Charmilla, and I'm probably going to mention him to a couple of our guests today just because I think they probably have some insight as to what goes on with these bureaucrats when they've completely run amok and should have been fired, but instead they now get national acclaim for being a hero of some kind as a whistleblower. So, that's exactly what Schiff did. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff said the whistleblower complaint amounts to impeachable defense. And Charmilla left the Trump White House soon after Mueller was appointed, and attempts to reach him were unsuccessful, although his father said in a phone interview from Hartford that where he's a bank executive, and his son he said he doubted that his son was that whistleblower. He didn't have that kind of access to that kind of information. He's just a guy going to work every day. But the whistleblower lawyers did not answer emails or phone calls seeking comment. They didn't want to talk about it. They want to protect him. So in his complaint, this Eric Charmello, this alleged whistleblower, he charged that the president used the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 U.S. election. Specifically, he cited a controversial July 25th phone call from the White House residence in which Trump asked Ukraine's new president to help investigate the origins of the Russian collusion investigation, with that a lot of that started with the Ukraine and Biden and Hillary. So I don't think he was even in the room for that phone call, and we have the transcript on that phone call. So here's what they have laid it out. Now they're saying he's interfering with the 2020 election. What? What about the 2016 election? This guy's been in it for forever, and even his father didn't realize that a low-level bureaucrat like that would have that kind of access.
Yeah, well, I would say this, that if you're on the left, you're not going to let the facts get in the way of a good narrative. If you've got a narrative, to this day, Adam Schiff does not apologize for having misled and lied to America. And he did lie. Let's be honest. He told us, he'd come out of hearing rooms and tell us, I've seen secret documents that makes my hair stand on end. And if you saw what I'd seen, you would know that Donald Trump was basically a Russian operative working with the Russians and that he colluded and blah, blah, blah. And he told us he saw this stuff. Well, all I can say to that is Mr. Mueller did not see it that way, and Mr. Mueller was clearly no friend of Donald Trump, so he wasn't hiding anything on his behalf. The fact is, it wasn't there, and Adam Schiff was lying. He wasn't misinformed. He didn't make an honest mistake. He's a lying sack of rotting fecal matter, period. So, at some point, people are going to have to stop relying on what he has to say, because at some point, it's just too embarrassing. It's like, really? You're going to go and give me this guy's stuff? Because this guy's he's a liar. That's all he is just a liar.
Well, and just to wrap this all up in a sweet little bow for Adam Schiff, he's got a guy on his staff now, this Sean Misko, who is one of this whistleblower, alleged whistleblowers, closest allies at the National Security Council. So these two guys work together, and now Sean Misko works for Adam Schiff. So we tied it all up. That's the connection. Adam Schiff said he didn't know the whistleblower, but now he's retracted on that and says, well, yeah, we did have some conversations. So the whole thing just stinks. I think that there's more here. You're the lawyer, but wow, it just seems like that railroading something like this against the president with so little, like you said, it's all hearsay, is there's a crime here. To me, there's a crime. I don't know. Where do you think the crime is? Malfeasance of the office? Where is it?
There's a couple crimes here. I would argue that when you, it's very possible the whistleblower and others committed crimes, to be honest with you, because they were releasing information about classified information. Someone also gave them classified information because they weren't even in the room. So if they were in the room, then them repeating what they heard in the room, based on being classified, to people who did not have the clearance to hear it, is a violation of the law. If they weren't in the room, then they were spreading around. Someone gave them classified information. They further spread it. as somebody who has some responsibility with classified information, again, that's a violation of the law. Adam Schiff, I'm not 100% sure if what he's done is a crime, because it's quite clear to me that most congressmen make a living lying to the public. And so I'm not sure it's illegal for him to do that. It probably should be, but I'm not sure it is. But we'll have a chance to see how intelligent and reasonable California voters are. Because if they return Adam Schiff to office, then we know that every dang one of the people in his district who voted for him is tolerant of and appreciates a lying sack of fecal matter. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, this is not a partisan issue. This is a guy who's been putting his personal political agenda ahead of America's interest. For example, we probably would already have a deal with China. But Adam Schiff's shenanigans has led them perhaps to drag their feet, hoping that, well, maybe he'll be gone and then we can deal with somebody like Joe Biden, who if we just throw some cash at him, he'll give us what we want. So I would argue...
Not at him, at his son.
Yeah, okay, at his son, whatever. At a family member somebody likes. But bottom line is, what Adam Schiff has done has compromised America's standing in the world, because he's tried to limit the effectiveness of our president. So, to me, these are big deals. These are acts of disloyalty to your country. I did not approve of, Mr. Obama's policies, but I never wanted to have him become hamstrung in his ability to represent America on the international stage, because I wasn't sure it was helpful for us to have a neutered president. I didn't want him to give all that cash to the Iranians, and I was hoping he wouldn't do that. But in general, I wanted the world to take him seriously, and I wanted them to think that America, that its president could defend America.
Well, with that, we're going to have to go to a break and get our first guest on. Our first guest is former Congressman Dr. Paul Broun, and we will be talking with him a bit about this impeachment. We are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, and we'll be right back after this break.
AM/FM 24/7 Roku channel broadcasts all of our shows on demand. To ensure reliability, we store and stream our content on the same servers as Netflix and Amazon. Our Roku channel is free to use, and anyone owning one of the more than 10 million Roku devices can watch our channel at no cost whatsoever. If you have a television show or are thinking about producing a show, you can be a part of AM/FM 24/7's Roku channel. Watch our great shows on your Roku device. It's free and more reliable than cable TV. Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is, there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to BuyYourTimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. BuyYourTimeshare.com. That's BuyYourTimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
Welcome back, fellow listeners. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Sharron Engel here with my co-host, George Landrith. And George, we have our first guest ready. Would you please introduce him?
Absolutely. I'm very pleased to introduce former Congressman and Dr. Paul Broun. He's a primary care physician, and he, of course, represented the 10th District of Georgia. And while serving in Congress, he served both on the Homeland Security Committee, the House Committee on Natural Resources, and he was the chairman of the Investigations and Oversight Subcommittee for House Science and Technology Committee. So with that, Dr. Broun, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos.
Well, George and Sharron, it's always great to be with y'all. Got to do a shout out for Rick Trader. He's a great friend and a great compadre to y'all in fighting for liberty and freedom and the truth. So glad to be with y'all.
We are very happy to have you with us. You know, on some respect, I feel almost guilty because I look at what's going on in the news and I shake my head at most of it. Nonetheless, we need to talk about it. So, impeachment is kind of all the rage now, and the impeachment hearings, never before held in the Intelligence Committee, usually a Judiciary Committee function, but for some reason they've decided to do things from start to finish differently than normal. But so I thought I'd get your take on things, because you've served in the House and you know the inner workings of how things are, and you probably know a lot of the players. And so let's get an insider's take on the, on impeachment.
Well, George and Sharron, it's I started to say it's a joke, but jokes are funny, and this is not funny. It's extremely serious. The bottom line, though, is that Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, and most of the Democrats are clinically psychotic. They're delusional. They don't face the facts. All of these public hearings that just went on last week, testimony after testimony was that there was no quid pro quo. We know that the only quid pro quo is done by quid pro Joe. Joe shake down Biden, but they don't say anything about him. And so even if he was guilty, which he's not, of asking the Ukrainians to look into what went on in the election in 2016, which is what he was asking for, didn't have anything to do with 2020. It had to do with the corruption of Joe Biden and his son, the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, DNC, the whole group of them. The Ukrainians were very deeply engaged in that effort to disqualify President Trump as a candidate, very illegally so. And he was just wanting to get to the bottom of it. And he asked the Ukrainian president to look into what Ukraine and some of the Ukrainian entities had to do with all this. And it's appropriate. We need to get to the bottom of all of what went on in 2016, in my opinion, because frankly, with what we know today, Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Rice, Lynch, Clinton, all of them are guilty of many, many crimes. They should be tried. They should go to jail if they're found guilty. And President Trump was just looking into that, trying to get the Ukrainian president, the current one, to look into what went on in that country so that we can bring those that need to be brought to justice to court so that they can have their day in court, and hopefully they'll go to jail because it's blatantly obvious that they're guilty. President Trump is not guilty of anything, but the Democrats are delusional. They're psychotic. Adam Schiff has schizophrenia, and they should be seen by the American public for what they really are.
It is interesting to me when you look at kind of what's going on here. There's a lot of projection that I see going on, because I remember when, in advance of the election, Donald Trump was asked, if you don't win, will you accept it? And he kind of was like, well, how would I know if there's lots of voter fraud, I don't want to accept that. But his attitude was one of kind of, let's see. I can't say in advance what I'll accept or not accept. And of course, they went crazy. Oh, see, he won't accept the election. He won't accept the legitimacy. And what I see is interesting. It'd be kind of like saying, if you lose the Super Bowl in a month, do you accept the legitimacy of that loss? And people might say, well, I don't know. It kind of depends on, did the refs get a payment of $1 million before the game? I want to know that.
Sure.
So to me, it was kind of, his response was pretty rational and reasonable. But ever since then, there has definitely been one party that doesn't accept the results of elections. You're from Georgia, so I think we've seen this in the Georgia governor's race. I mean, they keep acting like Stacey Abrams is the duly elected governor, like she won or something. And, it's just, so to me, there is truly some insanity. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know exactly what the label is. You're a doctor, you would have better sense of that.
Psychosis is the label.
All I know is to me, it seems crazy as all get out. That's the layman's term. Just, like mind-bogglingly crazy, because on the one hand, they're, Donald Trump won't accept this is outrageous. He won't accept the legitimacy of an election. It's like, so we've gone through 3 years of a party jumping from stone to stone to stone across this crazy creek. And every week it's something new. And as soon as that is proven to be false, they immediately, within a news cycle, jump to the new stone. And then, it's just, I don't know, it's driving me nuts.
Well, George, this is just the next chapter when chapter after chapter have failed. It was Russian collusion. It was obstruction of justice. Now it's quid pro quo. Well, actually, they've gone from that. Now they're talking about extortion and bribery, which absolutely there's no evidence of that whatsoever. Yeah. In fact, again,
even their star witnesses say
admitted extortionist Joe Biden is not being looked at all. The press says, "Oh, what he did is perfectly fine and good and acceptable and legal, etc." Hogwash. He's the one who's guilty of what the Democrats are saying that President Trump has done, and then they're trying to discredit all of the Republicans, Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan and others on the committee there. Now it's going to move to the judiciary, and we'll see what happens there. Gerald Nadler and my colleague from Georgia, Doug Collins, are going to be my guests holding hearings. The question in my mind is where they're going to go from here. Is Nancy Pelosi going to actually have a vote on the floor of the U.S. House? My guess is that what she's going to do is say that we'll let the voters impeach him on November 3rd, 2020, and just blame Republicans for all of the obstruction that they are doing, actually, and say, if you'll elect a Senate that's in the control of Democrats and reelect all of the Democrats and give us a bigger majority in the House, we will remove Donald Trump if he wins. But the reality is you need to elect a Democrat president, and then we'll be done with this crook. They keep on saying he's a crook and he's done all these things. He's not. He's just fighting to make America first, to make America great again. And they can't stand that. They are globalist. They believe in America being just equal to every country in the world, just a nation state amongst other nation states. And they're trying to destroy somebody who has done just tremendous things for all Americans. You look at the unemployment rate for all the minorities, it's the lowest, I think, in history. The economy is booming. The stock market is booming. I wouldn't be surprised to see if the Democrats and the Federal Reserve try to destroy the economy just before the election next year as well, just to try to get rid of Trump, because they'll do anything. They'll lie, they'll cheat, they'll steal, they'll break the law, as Comey, Clapper, Brennan, and all those did with FISA courts and all the other things that they did actually before the election in 2016. And all this started on November the 9th of 2016, this effort to get rid of Donald Trump. And it's going to continue for another 5 years, because hopefully the American people will see through this and we'll elect this great president that we have in Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I think he'll likely win re-election. I think on some level, I think all this impeachment garbage is going to help galvanize support. But I also agree with you that I don't think this goes away. I think that there'll be something new every week. I mean, for example, when the whole idea that it's an impeachable offense to disagree with Adam Schiff, I mean, he's basically argued, if you don't agree with me, like he's even argued if you want to go to court with us to have a judge decide who's right, that's an impeachable offense. It's like, really? So wow, I didn't realize that it was a sign of your guilt that you wanted to actually have some process. But that's Adam Schiff's statement, and just to me, it's nuts. But
well, remember, he said he had irrefutable evidence that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians.
Right.
And then the Mueller report, which was a joke in itself, should never have happened. Mueller is one of his best friends is Comey, and all he was doing is covering for Comey, Clapper, and Brennan. They're all good buddies. He should never ever been appointed. Rob Rosenstein, who is the acting was assistant attorney general at the time, he's part of the cabal that is anti-Trump. He's talking about wearing a wire to try to trip up Trump. He's part of it. He ought to be prosecuted as well. But it's all been an effort by people. And frankly, I think it's treasonous, because what they're trying to do is destroy a duly elected president and take over this government for themselves. And to me, that's treason.
Well, you make an interesting point, because when I was nobody in the country more disappointed when Barack Obama won re-election. But it never really occurred to me that the appropriate way to deal with that disappointment was to try to overthrow him. I just figured we needed to do better in the next election.
Right.
And hopefully in Congress make good arguments as to why his policies shouldn't be put into place. And that's fine. That's the democratic process taking place, but in checks and balances. But that's not what they're doing. It's a very different approach. You're right. But we're up against the break. I know Sharron wants to get on this conversation. So I will. I'll just let everyone know you're listening to Conservative Commandos. I'm George Landrith with Sharron Engel, and we're coming to the Conservative Commandos radio network, which is broadcast all across this great nation, on the AUN TV network, which is broadcast in California and soon in parts of Nevada as well. And of course, always on Al Gore's amazing internet. We truly are everywhere. Check out our website, ccrshow.com. Don't go away. Sharron and I and the Honorable Paul Broun will be right back.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America. And get this, did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Welcome back everyone. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of our show today on Conservative Commandos radio show, just check out our website, ccrshow.com, ccrshow.com, or friend us, follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm Sharron Angle. I'm here with my co-host, George Landrith, and we've been talking with the Honorable Dr. Paul Broun about impeachment. Welcome back. Thanks, Paul, for staying through the break. And I want to ask you, what's taken place so far? I know that there's going to be an empty Senate seat, and you have said, I like to sit in that seat. Talk to us a little bit. Give us an update.
Well, the governor is going to appoint someone to replace the retiring Johnny Isakson. Johnny Isakson announced a few months ago, actually, that he's going to retire on December the 31st. And the governor set up a process where anybody who is interested in being appointed to that seat would make an online application. Of course, I did just that. And we're waiting to hear from the governor. Evidently, he's not told anyone if he's made a decision yet. It's getting close to time for him to do so. And I think we may hear something from the governor the first week of December. Whoever he appoints is going to have to go to work right away, raising a lot of money from conservatives all over this nation, if it's me, to raise the money to be reelected, because whoever is appointed is going to have to run in what we call a jungle election on November 3rd next year. A jungle election is one where Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Constitutional Party, Green Party, anybody who qualifies will all be on the same ballot, and it's going to be on the election date for the general election for the president next year. If someone doesn't get 50% plus one vote, then they're going to have a runoff in January of 2021, and then they have to run again in 2022. But I'm ready to go to work. We've got to support our president, and the president will not have any stronger supporter in the U.S. Senate than me, and I'll be very vocal. I'm just wondering, where are our senators that are going to the floor? All we hear from is Lindsey Graham, and I will go to the floor on a routine basis to talk just like we're talking right now about how ridiculous the Democrats are over in the House. And I will be a very strong supporter of President Trump. Hopefully I'll get there, and then we can fight to stop this out of control government, stop this out of control, irresponsible, unsustainable spending and debt that Republicans and Democrats alike are building. And hopefully the governor is going to appoint me. We'll see.
It seems like the fellow you're replacing, this Representative Johnny Isakson, is no friend of Trump's. I have an article here that says he said it sounds like a hard quid pro quo to him. That's almost as bad as the senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, saying that he's for impeachment, isn't it?
Well, I haven't talked to Johnny Isakson. He's a personal friend, and I have a tremendous respect for Johnny Isakson. My guess is he really has not looked at this very closely, or maybe even was misquoted. I don't believe the press, frankly. My guess is he's been misquoted by saying that it looks like quid pro quo. But if you look at what some of the testimony was all about last week, every one of them said they believed it was quid pro quo, but when they were asked by the Republicans, do you have any evidence of this being a quid pro quo? Every single one of them said no, that they do not. And hopefully Johnny Isaacs will look at the facts and will support the president.
Yeah.
I believe he was
They
just
admitted that
misquoting
they
in
presumed it.
Yeah, well, that's right. They all presumed they you see what was going on. You had Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, who just totally disagrees with the president's policy in Ukraine. I believe that what he did and the facts show very closely that he talked to somebody. I think he talked to that Eric Chermuni or whatever the guy's name is, who was the whistleblower, about what went on in that conversation. That young man is very pro-Biden, very pro Nancy Pelosi, very pro-Democrat, ardent, progressive, radical, reactionary individual who hates Trump. And he was in the White House. That kid was in the White House. I can't say he's kid. I think he's 32 or 33 years old. But I believe he's the whistleblower. And then all the other people who testified last week, every single one of them wanted to continue Obama's policy in Ukraine. But President Trump is changing all that, and they're angry. So they're all coming, trying to take Trump down because they want to go back to that same old globalist policy that President Obama had in place. And the Johnny Isakson and Mitt Romney and all the Republicans need to look at that before, if it ever comes to a trial in the Senate. Hopefully it won't. But President Trump invited just this weekend, said, bring it on. And I want to clear my name, and I certainly understand that. We'll see what Nancy Pelosi does.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Eric's, I think it's Ciaramella.
Ciaramella, right.
Ciaramella, Eric Ciaramella. Nobody wants to call him by name, and I guess they've even put some gags on Fox News commentators. But we're going to say his name a lot here on Conservative Commando's radio show. And it turns out that Congressman Louis Gohmert said it out in the in his Security Council meeting, his Natural Resources Committee. He just said Eric Ciaramella. So he says that everybody's known. A lot of people in Washington have known about this guy, that he's a staunch Democrat and that he's partisan. What do you?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I think he's more than just a Democrat and a partisan. He's a radical, progressive activist who's trying to take this Trump presidency down, and he's joined Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. I think actually Vindman should be court-martialed because he's broken his oath of office as a military officer. He should be demoted to private. He should be dishonorably discharged, and I think he should be prosecuted in a civil court or at least in a military court under the Uniform Military Code. The other people, as I've already mentioned on the first segment, I think Comey, Clapper, Rice, Lynch, Hillary Clinton, all of them are part of this group of folks that are trying to take this president down. We've never seen this ever in history, where the CIA, where the FBI, the National Security Council, all of these that are supposed to be protecting us are actually trying to protect their policy and their candidate, and it's totally inappropriate. They ought to all be fired. Eric Ciaramella should be prosecuted under the Hatch Act at the least. He should not be protected under the Whistleblower Act, because this is not whistleblowing by any means, and it's some abuse or misuse of the whistleblowing statute. So he needs to be outed. He needs to be brought before Lindsey Graham's committee. I did a post on Facebook a couple of weeks ago saying that Lindsey Graham ought to call every single person that appeared in Adam Schiff's committee and have an open hearing and grill these folks and let us find out exactly what's going on. And they need to be asked very hard questions about why they're trying to take this president down. Adam Schiff ought to come before them, be sworn in as well. I think every single one of them should be. Of course, I've been blasted by the liberals for even calling for that. this is not just an impeachment investigation. It's another chapter in the efforts by all of the deep state and by the Democrats, as well as the press, to try to take this president down. And they're all, at the least, they're accessories to a crime, to many crimes, and they all ought to be prosecuted, in my opinion.
Well, I wonder if we shouldn't call some of the news media too, because it seems like by their silence, their very silence on this man's name and refusing to talk about him, that they are actually kind of in collaboration or aiding and abetting here, just by keeping news from the people. What do you think about that?
Well, you're right, and they're co-conspirators in this whole effort to take down our president. And I hope American people see through all this, turn off CNN, turn off NBC, ABC, you go on and on, all the major news networks, because they're lying. They're promoting Adam Schiff's lies. Adam Schiff has been caught in many lies, and so Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, in his own testimony, made contradictory statements. He lied under oath. And we need to put all these people under oath again. They all ought to come before the American public, and hope Lindsey Graham will do that.
Well, and it sounds like some of them need to at least pay a fine and maybe spend a few days in jail, too, it seems.
I think more than a few days. They need to spend a few months, maybe a few years in jail.
There are some crimes being committed. Dr. Paul Broun, Congressman and future Senator, tell us.
From your lips to God's ears. And
tell us how it can help
Governor Brian Kemp's heart. You know what?
Tell us how our audience can follow you, get a hold of you, help you with your pursuit of the Senate seat.
Well, I'm not sure what they could do as far as helping get me appointed, besides praying and ask God to stir our Governor Brian Kemp's heart to get him to put me in the office. And I think that's a very, very powerful tool. In Scripture, God says the prayers of a righteous man or woman availeth much. And so I ask for people's prayers in that regard. My Twitter handle is at Paul Broun for Georgia, PaulBroun 4GA. That's my Twitter account. They can look there. I've got a couple of different Facebook pages that I utilize. It's just Paul Broun. So once Paul Broun uses my childhood nickname, Sandy, I post the same thing on both of those. And then my website is paulbroun.com, PaulBroun.com. And my address, my email address there is paul@paulbroun.com. So people can contact me that way.
Well, Dr. Paul Broun, we thank you so much for being here on Conservative Commandos radio show. Take care and God bless.
God bless y'all. Thank y'all so much. It's always a blessing and a pleasure to visit with y'all. Thanks, George. Thanks, Sharron. And tell Rick hello for me.
We will. I'm Sharron Engel, and my co-host is George Landrith. We are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, AM, FM 24/7, iHeartRadio, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio, and now you can watch us on the AUN TV network in Northern California. We'll be right back after this break.
AM FM 24/7 Roku channel broadcasts all of our shows on demand. To ensure reliability, we store and stream our content on the same servers as Netflix and Amazon. Our Roku channel is free to use, and anyone owning one of the more than 10 million Roku devices can watch our channel at no cost whatsoever. If you have a television show or are thinking about producing a show, you can be a part of AM FM 24/7's Roku channel. Watch our great shows on your Roku device. It's free and more reliable than cable TV. Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is, there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to buyyourtimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. Buyyourtimeshare.com. That's buyyourtimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Conservative Commandos radio show, with a shout out to our stations in Tampa, the Villages, Florida, Macon, Georgia, Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Alexandria, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Long Beach, California. I'm Sharron Engel. He's George Landrith, and we are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos radio studios, and we have our first guest our second guest, actually, George. I don't know where my head is. We've got our second guest with us, and would you please introduce him?
Absolutely. I am pleased to introduce Frank Vernuccio. He is the editor-in-chief of the New York Analysis of Policy and Government. And they provide objective coverage of key issues facing the United States today, which is something you won't find in much of the mainstream media, where what you get is some crazy view of things. But at any rate, Frank is the co-host of the Vernuccio Novak Report, a nationally broadcast radio and web program. You can find it at AM/FM 24/7. He also co-hosts the American Political Zone, a broadcast on cable in the Connecticut area, and also it's on the AUN TV network as well. So with that, Frank, welcome back to the Conservative Commando radio show and television show.
George, Sharron, it's great to be with you again.
Absolutely, we're glad to have you. You've written a really interesting article that I read both, and I found it insightful and on some level humorous. And I don't mean humorous, and I don't mean silly humorous. I mean humorous in the sense that you kind of captured the insanity of the world we live in today. And you did it pretty aptly. But it's entitled Middle Finger Politics. So let's talk a little bit about middle finger politics.
Well, there was always a concept from the founding of our nation that politics and our government was responsive to the people, that we voted in people to elective offices and they were there to fulfill our wishes. Lately, though, certainly in the past 75 years or so, we've seen the growth of a bureaucracy that doesn't feel any responsibility to accede to the wishes of the electorate. We see this particularly in the Trump administration, where President Trump was elected very specifically, I think, to address a number of issues which were aggravating the American people. The bureaucracy rebelled against the election of 2016. We saw it in the phony Russian collusion charge. We see it now in this ridiculous impeachment movement. The fact is, when you have bureaucrats and professional government careerists, and they can be bureaucrats or they can be professional politicians who have never held a real job in their lives, when they feel immune from the wishes of the public. A bureaucrat can't be voted out of office. Democrat bureaucrats are successful in going from appointed positions to civil service positions, and they survive from administration to administration, and they essentially say to the wishes of the American people as expressed in elections, well, middle finger. And that's what middle finger politics is all about. It's interesting. I had this article published in a number of national sources, but also in a smaller local paper. And I have never received more reaction from the population and from my neighbors than for any other article I've ever written. People are coming up to me in stores, at the supermarket, and saying, you know, it's about time someone actually said that. No one ever put it in those terms. Now, I have to admit, George, that a Democrat leader who also lives in my neighborhood gave me the middle finger. And I don't think he was doing it to praise the article, but I think that's a different story altogether.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that is the insanity of the world we live in. I guess I'd like to just kind of bring in maybe an historical question here. There was a time in the world, not in our country's history, but in the world's history, where the way you governed people was you amassed power and the ability to impose your will on people, whether it was by having the most clubs or the most swords or whatever the weapon was. That's the way the game was played. And then we decided, at some point, society decided elections was a better way to do things. But now we're getting to a point where I'm beginning to feel like maybe elections don't matter. And what I mean by that is you and I can sit down and have an election. We can vote. We can cast our ballot. And then guess what? The next 3 years, there are people in government trying to pretend that election didn't happen. So then the risk to me is this, is that when that becomes the prevalent view of what's happening, people may say, never mind, let's go back to the old way. Because this election thing doesn't work anymore. And that's a really bad place to be in. So I would argue the people who are doing this are really begging for us to go back to this very uncivil, rough world. And I don't know that they're really ready for that or really want that, but I think that's what they're pushing us towards.
George, you're exactly right. And let's be blunt how all that changed. It changed in 1776 when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson has become a reviled figure now. As we see the rise of socialism in the United States, the reaction against elected politics, against the government being responsive to the people, that is all a piece. Socialism is not responsible to the will of the people. It's a small group of elitists who believe that we are a bunch of idiots. They are brilliant, and they will tell us how to live our lives, how to run our businesses, and so forth. When you have an elite group, and by the way, whether that elite group is called a monarchy, a fascist dictatorship, a Nazi regime, or a communist government, it's all basically the same. It's a small group of people who know they believe better than the rest of us, and we can just shut up, sit down, and sit back and take orders. What is so disturbing, George, about the rise of socialism in the United States, it's doing exactly what you pointed out. It's going back to a system where the guys with the clubs, the swords, the guns, or whatever weapon you want to use have the power, where elections don't really count. Hey, listen, in the Soviet Union, they had elections all the time. They didn't really count for anything. Many times there was just one party on the ballot. In China, there's one leader, now President Xi, who's decided he is the leader for life. They can pretend to have elections. Interestingly enough, we see in Hong Kong, the elections that were just passed, I believe the Popular Party, the self-governing party, won 390 of about 435 seats. President Xi is supposedly very frightened about that because he believes that if he allows that to stand, then the people in mainland China will say, hey, if they can have free elections in Hong Kong, why can't we have it here? It's a real watershed moment for China. It's a real turning point. But interestingly enough, as the heroic people of Hong Kong risk their lives and their freedom to do that, we see our college students, our Democratic Party, the socialist media in the United States going in exactly the opposite direction.
Let's talk about, we've only got a little bit of time left in this segment, but on day one, in fact, actually before day one, because day one will be the day he was inaugurated, basically shortly after the election, the conversation immediately turned to, we'll impeach him for something. People were saying, make me the chairman of this committee or put me on that committee because I'll work towards impeaching him and so forth. We've heard that as well. So let's talk about what is his real crime, as it were, because I think his real crime isn't even tweets that offend people. I think his real crime is he won in 2016. So what say you?
Well, the two most consequential for good presidents in the United States in the past 100 years or so, Ronald Reagan and, of course, Donald Trump. Let's go back a bit. I recall back in the late 70s when Ronald Reagan was starting to gear up to run for president, the Republican Party disliked him immensely. The Democrats, of course, were apoplectic. I live in New York City. There were people walking around on election day saying that Ronald Reagan was the father of World War III, that the planet was going to blow up if Ronald Reagan got elected president, that the economy would crash. We would be in a depression unlike anything we've ever seen before. And of course, it was the Soviet Union that fell apart and the economy jumped up and we ended the hyperinflation that had occurred under the previous administrations. The economy was great. We come to the Donald Trump election. You elect Donald Trump, the world's going to go to war. World War III would start. The economy is going to crash. Does anyone remember all the stories about how the stock market would go through the floor if Donald Trump got elected? So what do we have now? We have the American military finally being rebuilt. We have the economy doing better than it's done in the past 50 years. And we see American workers finally getting a piece of the table while President Trump fights to take their jobs back from China. Isn't it fascinating, George, that the Democratic Party that purports to represent workers is vehemently opposed to this president who's trying to bring blue-collar jobs back from China to American workers?
That's amazing. We are against the clock, and I don't want to go over because I want to make sure that Sharron has a chance to jump in, and so I'll remind our listeners that, of course, this is the Conservative Commandos. I'm George Landrith with Sharron Engel. We're talking, of course, with Frank Vernuccio, and we're going to be right back after these messages, but just want to remind you, check out our website, ccrshow.com, for more information, for rebroadcasts. We truly are everywhere. Don't go away.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Sharron Engel here with my co-host, George Landrith, and we've been talking with our friend, Frank Vernuccio, about the middle finger of bureaucracy at the American People, an article that he wrote just discussing that deep state and really what it all means to us as a free country. Frank, as a legislator, I was told my freshman year, actually, I was about 6 weeks in, and one of the bureaucrats, very nice fellow, said, my job is to be nice to you, but you won't be here in 10 years. I will. I have the institutional memory. I know how this place works, and I'll teach you, but you won't be here, and I will. And that's really their attitude. They're nice to you, but they know that they're really the power behind most of the legislators. It's quite unnerving, I guess, to find out how deep the deep state really goes. So with that, I guess I should get to a question. I thought you might want to comment on that, but
actually, it's fascinating. I mean, I was in city and state government for 20 years, and what I found, again, was fascinating in that in many cases, I was the head of the Workers' Compensation Board in New York after 9/11, and there were several times when people in the bureaucracy at the head of that bureau would make policy changes that were supposed to be made by a legislature. And I would bring up saying, well, it's very interesting that you want to do this. You want to change this section, but I can't approve of it because this is legislative. It's not just a bureaucratic thing. It's changing the nature of the law. We have gotten so far away from the concept of a law designed by the people, favored by the people, that it's reflected in the way we do business as a government. And it's also reflected, I know we've had this conversation on the air a bit before, it's also reflected in the disdain that academia and the elite have for the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment, heaven forbid anyone wants to approve of that anymore. The First Amendment, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York a couple of years ago introduced a bill in the United States Senate, got 42 votes, all Democrat, to amend the Bill of Rights so that it didn't apply to paid political speech. And of course, you try to talk to anyone about the 9th and 10th Amendments that say that those rights not given to the federal government belong to the people or to the states, and you're a real dinosaur. But that's the essence of what America is, that Bill of Rights. And you look at the perspective, if you look at the curriculum in our colleges, if you look at the statements made by Hollywood figures, they have utter disdain for that Bill of Rights. And between that and the takeover of our actual government by the bureaucracy, we are living in very, very dangerous times.
Well, I think it's interesting how deep the deep state does go here. I was thinking it was just the top level of our bureaucracy, but here we have a fellow that's the alleged whistleblower, Eric Charmella, who is a bureaucrat, isn't he? I mean, that's what he is, and he's an intelligence analyst with the CIA. So here we go. No one wants to talk about this guy. Frank Vernuccio, tell us what you know, because it's rumored that everybody in Washington, D.C. knew about this Eric Charmella.
Yeah, in the midst of a masochistic impulse, I watched the entire length of the hearings. What was fascinating was when you boil it down to the essence, and as someone who has a law degree, I do that a lot, it really came down to that we, the bureaucracy, didn't like what this president was doing. We didn't approve of him. We didn't approve of his tactics. We didn't approve of his tone. Therefore, we did our best to get him out of office. Now, what's fascinating when you look at this from a trial perspective, from a legal perspective, there's no evidence that he did anything wrong. And indeed, if everything the Democrats allege that he did, there's still no crime there. There's still nothing that's actually wrong. The essence of it, when you boil it down, is that we, the bureaucrats, didn't like what you, the elected, what the people did in the 2016 election, and we're going to stop you because you're too dumb to govern yourselves, after all.
So where does the Hatch Act really come in with this alleged whistleblower, Eric Charmella. I mean, it's against the law for him to participate in this much of a partisan effort, isn't it?
It is, but also let me go into one area. I really think the term whistleblower is incorrect when talking about Eric Charmella. A whistleblower is someone who has some kind of secret, he knows a secret company policy that's doing something wrong. Eric's problem is that he didn't like the president's policies. That's not being a whistleblower. That's getting involved in politics. You know, does that mean that if you or I or George dislikes what the senators from our state are doing, and we go to someone and say, Senator so-and-so is doing this policy, we're whistleblowers and we're protected? That's sheer nonsense. The term whistleblower, and I was somewhat disappointed that the Republicans on the committee didn't get into this, the term whistleblower should not apply to Eric at all. There is nothing that he's doing that would fit the traditional concept of what a whistleblower actually is. He had a policy disagreement with the president, period.
Well, and they're protecting him right here. Here we have this deep state, this bureaucracy that, as you say, has very little regard for the Constitution, very little regard for elected officials. They are running the show from behind the scenes. They like it that way. They get irritated if it goes against what they think should be happening. And yet there's this protection going on because this article says that the CNN knows, the Washington Times knew, the New York Times knew, Congress knew, the White House knew. Everybody knew who this guy was, and yet they're all protecting him. Why?
Because it's the source of their power. Look, how many times have we had discussions, we as an American people, about how elections don't seem to change anything? Whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, nothing seemed to change. But for two presidents, things changed really dramatically. Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Things happened. The Soviet Union fell under Ronald Reagan. The economy revived under Ronald Reagan. Under Donald Trump, we've rebuilt the military. We started to finally go against China with their rapacious policies of stealing jobs from the American workers, stealing the research from American companies. But you know what? How many companies, how many politicians have investments in places like China or Ukraine? We talk a lot about Hunter Biden getting those $50,000 or some say $80,000 a month from Burisma. Well, what's not been discussed very much in the press, but it's out there, is that Hunter Biden flew to China aboard Air Force Two when his father was vice president of the United States and came back with $1 billion deal in his pocket in an area he had absolutely no expertise in. But you know what? I bet Hunter Biden is not alone. I bet Joe Biden is not alone. I bet numerous politicians have benefited from these dirty deals that screw the American worker, that screw the American people. But hey, you know, we're just too stupid to talk about it. Donald Trump has upset that very, very lucrative apple cart. And so these people are raging for two reasons. Number one, it's hit them in the pocket where it really hurts. And number two, if this goes on, if we start to expose the Hunter Bidens and the dirty Joe Bidens, these people are not only going to wind up being a lot less rich, they're all going to wind up in legal trouble as well. This is why you see the Democrats fighting so hard. They're not just fighting for money. They're fighting for their freedom. They're fighting for their lives. Some of these clowns could wind up in jail, and deservedly so.
Well, so why are they protecting the bureaucracy, though? This is a low-level guy, really, or a medium level. I guess GS-13 is around medium income for government service. 15 is starting to get up there, but 13's not so much. This guy, he shouldn't even have known about a lot of the things that he apparently has been talking about.
You know, I've been in two administrations, both Democrat and Republican, and I can tell you from the inside how different they are. The Republicans look at politics as something they practice every election year. The Democrats live, breathe, and sleep this stuff. The bureaucracy is part and parcel of the Democrat Party. When a Republican young fellow comes up and he wants to make a name for himself in politics, Well, the Republicans don't give him a lot of help. They just say, well, good luck to your son. We hope, or lady, we hope it works out. The Democrats say, hey, that's great. We can use you in the future. I tell you what, so you can finesse your message. You can get involved in politics while you're on the clock. We're going to get you a job in the bureaucracy. You hurt the bureaucracy and you hurt the heart of the Democrat Party. So a guy like Eric Chiamella and some of these other folks, they are so much a part of this entire routine that when they get attacked, the Democratic Party feels it right here, feels it right in the heart. They understand this is attacking the core of their strength, the core of their survival.
The core of their survival. Well, it turns out that Chiamella worked with the Democratic National Committee during 2016. It looks like he's worked with Biden. It looks like he's worked with Schiff, as you say. He works for everybody. Is that the way? Is that the way the Democrat bureaucracy is? I mean, if so, what should a president do with the bureaucracy when he takes office? What should Trump have done with all these guys?
Let's give an example. When Bill Clinton took office, he fired a huge number of people in the Department of Justice, a number of lawyers, which is his right to do as president. The media didn't say anything about it at all. When George Bush 43 took over, he fired a smaller number of lawyers in the Department of Justice. The media went crazy. They said this is a Saturday night massacre. It's horrible. Again, we see this essence of the Democratic Party, the essence of the left. The bureaucracy is their heart and their soul. And when Donald Trump talked about draining the swamp, they felt it. They felt it right in the heart. They realized this was a dagger pointed at their survival, and that's why they reacted so sharply to it. And they knew he was going to do it. I was in Washington covering the inauguration. I was there before the inauguration. People were marching around Washington with signs that said, impeach Donald Trump. Well, I went up to a bunch of them, microphone in hand, and I said, I'm interested in your perspective. Can you tell me why do you want to impeach someone who hasn't even been sworn in yet? In fact, how can you talk about impeaching someone who hasn't been sworn in yet? And they would kind of look at me blank as if I was crazy or something from another planet. They say, well, you just don't understand. And I said, explain it to me. And they said, well, it's impossible to explain because the answer is not one that they really want printed. This was a guy who was coming in like a bull in a china shop, trying to restore American government to the way it's supposed to be.
Well, and they just really don't want us to talk about it. And they cannot explain it. We're up against the clock, Frank Vernuccio. Could you tell our listeners how they can follow you and read your article, Middle Finger Politics?
Well, most importantly, go on the Conservative Commandos to get our radio show and our TV show. USAGovpolicy.com is our website. We have a new research article up there 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And you're all welcome to come aboard.
Thank you so much, Frank Vernuccio, for being our guest here on Conservative Commandos radio show. Take care and God bless.
George, Sharron, happy Thanksgiving, and to all your listeners as well.
Thank you. And we are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio Network, and now you can watch us on the AUN TV network in Northern California. George and I will be right back with our next guest.
Are you stuck with a timeshare? Did you attend the presentation and were seduced and enticed into buying that great vacation and investment? Now you're in the terrible position of trying to figure out a way to get out of that mess. You're not alone. For over 15 years, BuyYourTimeshare.com has been helping people like yourself get out of timeshare ownership. The fact is there is no resale market. Unscrupulous telemarketers call you and say they have buyers waiting, and the next thing that happens is you give them hundreds of dollars for an ad, and you'll never hear from them again. Another fact is that an identical timeshare to yours is being offered on eBay for $1, and no one is buying it. If you want out of your timeshare, I urge you to go to buyyourtimeshare.com or call them at 877-94-HELP-ME. That number again is 877-94-HELP-ME. Buyyourtimeshare.com. That's buyyourtimeshare.com. 877-94-HELP-ME.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Here's why. Dish has the nation's lowest TV price, along with an award-winning DVR that can skip commercials, record 8 shows at once, and get access to thousands of movies at your fingertips. Cable simply can't even compare. So the smart choice is to cut the cable and get Dish. Plus, you get all these great TV features, free HD DVR upgrade, free installation, and free movie channels. Say goodbye to cable and get more with Dish TV. 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. As an added bonus, you can switch to Dish now and receive a $50 Visa gift card. So call now and get Dish TV. Call 877-290-7764, 877-290-7764. That's 877-290-7764. Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, monthly equipment fees, and other restrictions apply. Promotion can change at any time.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm here with my co-host, George Landrith. I'm Sharron Engel. And we are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos studios with a shout out to our listeners that listen on the radio in the Villages and Tampa, Florida, Macon, Georgia, Las Vegas, and Reno, Nevada, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Alexandria, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Colorado Springs, Colorado, Long Beach, California, and, of course, we're on the AUN TV network in Northern California. George, we have our next guest with us. Would you please introduce him?
Absolutely. I'd be very proud to. We are excited to have Jonathan Miltimore. He is the managing editor for the Foundation for Economic Education. So that's FEE.org. Now, he is, you've probably read his stuff in many different places. His writing and reporting has appeared in Time Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, Forbes, Fox News. He also has had editorial roles at the History Channel Magazine, Intellectual Takeout, and Scout. Now, he's also an alumnus of the Institute for Humane Studies. They have a journalism program there, and he's been a part of that. He was also a former reporter with the Panama City News Herald, and he served as an intern in the speechwriting department for George W. Bush. So with that, John, welcome to the Conservative Commandos.
Thanks for having me on, George. When you recite my resume that way, you make me feel old.
Sorry about that. I promise. If you want to feel young again, just look at my face and you'll realize that you're actually very young. But at any rate, so I wanted to talk with you a little bit about kind of socialism, because we live in a world now where we always hear about in the news that, you know, socialism is awesome, it's wonderful, it provides people with what they need, blah, 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 blah. And it seems to me these people don't have any sense of history at all. If they're saying those kinds of things, they just as well say that gravity is like some weird construct and it doesn't actually work that way.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's funny. I saw a quote the other day on the internet, but it's a true quote actually. You know, not a fake one. There's a lot of those, but just from Hegel, and he said the one thing, you know, that we know for certain is that humans don't learn from history, and I think we see a lot of that today. Some just very, you know, lessons that we can see over and over again. We just fail to learn those lessons.
Yeah, well, you know. If we look at history and we kind of look at, and my example would be, I just ask people, show me where socialism has worked. And they don't really have a place, but they will sometimes pick a place that doesn't actually engage in socialism. They may have a big welfare state, but they're not actually socialist, and they'll point to that. But if you look at the states that actually are socialist, they've all been raging failures. And so you have a great article about Russian socialism and a grocery store trip, and how it exposed the lie. So let's talk a little bit about that, and let's have a conversation about what this lie of socialism is and how it was exposed.
Yeah, you know, this story was fascinating for me because I actually remember this. I was about 10 years old when Boris Yeltsin came over And he was here for a visit on state business that wasn't related to this, but he just stopped at a grocery store in Texas, in a little suburb of Houston, and he couldn't believe what he saw. And he was running around the grocery store just marveling at all the wealth that he saw in this grocery store, because he had never seen anything like that. And he actually said, he told a reporter for the Houston Chronicle, he said, even Mr. Gorbachev doesn't have choice like this. And he was asking all these questions like, how do you have to have a degree to run these stores? He just never seen anything like it. And he was part of the Politburo. He was the upper crust of the Soviet Union, and this really impressed him.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I remember reading stories when defectors would come to the United States, and they'd have a handler from, I guess the CIA or whatever, and they would sometimes take them to grocery stores and get reactions of, oh, this is a fake government-run store to impress me, isn't it? And he'd be like, no, yeah. This is just the local Safeway or the local Giant or the local, whatever. And they'd be like, oh, no, I don't believe it. There's no way that this is, that regular Americans shop at places like this. And he's like, okay, well, let's go to another one. And they went to another one. He's like, oh, well, this is just the other government store that you've designed to kind of, So these were people who were defecting. So they were dissatisfied, but still found it impossible to believe that anything could be this awesome until after they went to like a dozen stores. And then they're like, okay, fine. I guess this is how it really is. But it's just interesting that these are things that as Americans we take completely for granted. And you could be an American who's relatively poor, and guess what? You still get to go into these stores and have this tremendous choice, and this, like I've even heard that some of them were a little disconcerted by the choices, that they found the fact that there were 14 different kinds of green beans to be a little bit like oppressive. Like, wait a minute, I don't have time to think about 14 different kinds of green beans. This is, and so I don't know that as an American we fully appreciate what we have. And yet when other people come to visit, they're usually blown away by it.
No, it's true. In America, our biggest problem today is we're overwhelmed with choices, right? We have all these different companies that want to sell us products, and they're trying to find the best way to do it. Yeah. We have Amazon and Walmart today fighting to deliver our groceries to our doorstep.
Right. Find ways and using technology so that I can, while I'm at work, I can tell them what I want put in my refrigerator and they'll do it. And in the Soviet Union, you could wait for 3 weeks. It's incredible
when you stop and think about it.
Yeah. Get in line and so forth, queue up in line. So it's kind of interesting how it changes. But you're involved with economic education. So educate us a little bit on this. Why is it that socialism doesn't work that well? I mean, after all, you've got all these great experts. These are people with advanced degrees, the smartest people that the government can hire in these socialist countries, and they're making choices and decisions. Why are they not very good at it?
Yeah, I think what you look at when you look at economies, they're so vast, they're so complex. It doesn't matter how smart you are. You can't put enough minds together to say, like, okay, this is where we're going to put these resources, and this is where we're going to put these resources. I heard a great story the other day about Gorbachev and Reagan, and he asked Reagan, he said, how do you make sure all the people get fed? And for Gorbachev, that was his biggest concern. If you look at the New York Times in 1988, 1989, you see these stories where they were talking about how is Gorbachev going to feed the people? Famine was a big problem, his biggest worry. And Reagan responded, he's like, I don't worry about it. And that's what you have with the market economy. You have people, it's in their interest to deliver these goods to people and to deliver them, to just give them a product they want. Yeah. And I think that's really hard for people to understand. We think that if we just put the best and brightest minds together, they should steer these things. But the truth is just letting individuals make choices, by letting people operate freely, they're going to make good decisions overall. And we've seen again and again, economically, there's just nothing that stands up to that.
So you look around in your neighborhood close to your home, there's shopping centers with grocery stores and clothing stores and pizza places and other restaurants and movie theaters, and there was no government agency that planned all that out. Those things sprung up, and if it was a bad idea, they went out of business a year later, and it became something else. But the reality is the stuff that sticks. It's because someone made a good choice, and then we're the beneficiary. But you don't need a government agency and a bureaucracy to figure out, oh, we need a new Starbucks over here. And I guess that's the way socialism works, right?
Very much. And it's interesting when you look, for us, it's obvious that the Soviet Union was going to fail today. It was just like, there was all these, writing on the wall. That really wasn't the case. If you look in the 1980s, if you look at 88, 89, even right before the wall came down, there were still leading economists that believed the communist system was superior. And they were still writing papers about it, and there was still a great public debate on that issue. Yeah. So this idea, today we say like, of course, that was communism. Communism doesn't work, but this more benign type of socialism, we can make that work, and that's going to help people. And I think Hayek had it right. A lot of people say Hayek said, socialism will inevitably lead to communism and authoritarianism. What Hayek said, people misquote Hayek a lot. And they say that he said socialism and authoritarianism is inevitable for democratic socialism. And he didn't actually say that. He said it's a likely outcome, but societies that are liberal in the traditional classical liberal sense can still reject the authoritarianism. They don't have to take that path. But even in that case, you're left usually with a bloated welfare state, a lot of liabilities that nation states are going to have a hard time paying. So this idea that democratic socialism is going to work out and isn't dangerous simply is not true.
Makes sense. Well, we're up against the clock, Jonathan. So I do want to remind our listeners, you are listening and watching the Conservative Commandos. I'm George Landrith with Sharron Engel. We've been talking with John Miltimore, and we will be right back after these messages. But I do want to remind you to just keep our website in mind if you want more information or you want to check out a rebroadcast, ccrshow.com. We will be right back.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving, and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call low-cost airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call 888-431-0562. That's 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562. 888-431-0562.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to the secret war, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America. And get this, did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The Secret War is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Sharron Engel. My co-host is George Landrith, and we are today brought to you, like all of our shows, by the First Amendment and protected by the Second Amendment. If you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of this show, go to our website, ccrshow.com, ccrshow.com. We've been talking with our guest, Jonathan Miltimore, who is the managing editor of Foundation of Economic Freedom, or Economic Education. I think it is Economic Freedom as well, John. And he's written a great article, How a Russian Grocery Store Trip in 1989 Exposed the Lie of Socialism. And, you know, there is a lie. We know that the Soviets considered themselves socialists, right? I mean, that's in their name, USSR. It's the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. And the Nazis also considered themselves socialists. So what's the difference between Nazi socialism and Russian socialism, and what Bernie Sanders is telling us we all need?
Oh boy, that's a tricky question. I think it's fair to say that the Soviets did implement a full command economy. And they went hardcore into traditional Marxist style socialism that said the government isn't just going to take private resources and use them. The government's going to run all of the market system itself. In fact, they're going to shut down private markets and operate them themselves. Although even Lenin, there were examples where Lenin said, well, this isn't working, and did let markets operate. The Nazis operated a little bit differently. I think that the Nazis were clever enough in a sinister way where they said, well, we're just going to, it was closer to like what we think of fascism, where we're going to let you run that, but it's ours. And if you don't play ball with us, we're gonna take care of you. And so they didn't run as much as a command style economy. And I think with what we see with the modern democratic socialism is they're saying we're gonna have a socialism that doesn't have any sort of these authoritarian elements. We're just gonna look at private property and not really pay much attention to that, and say we're going to take it and redistribute it in a way that we think is fair. And I think people forget, that's kind of what I shouldn't say kind of, that is what Hugo Chavez ran on. Hugo Chavez was a democratic socialist, and we did see where that went. So I think there's differences here, but the road can end in the same place, and that's what we need to remember.
Well, and I guess that's why I'm bringing up all of these other socialist countries. China, socialist, correct?
Yeah, I think China was for many years very much in the same vein as the Soviet Union. Now, China in the late 70s, early 80s did implement a lot of reforms. They saw the power of markets, really, and if you look at their economically, they responded because of that. They've experienced one of the biggest economic booms in history, and it was because they looked to some of the things that were being done in the West and decided to implement a lot of those things into tap into fossil fuels and into and they've experienced a lot of wealth because of that, but they still are very much an authoritarian system as well.
And I guess that's the thing that they're denying. These socialists like Sanderson and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, those that are always already embracing this socialism and telling our young people that this is far superior to capitalism, and yet we see that the Nordic socialists, Sweden and the Scandinavian countries, they take offense at being called socialists.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I think we measure these things. We measure economic freedom. There's several organizations that do that, and if you look at most of the Scandinavian countries, they're slightly or better or slightly worse than the United States. So the idea that they're socialist nations is false, and their leaders are telling Senator Sanders and others that.
So really, there's a disconnect in education here, right? I'm getting back to your foundation of economic education. Bernie Sanders really doesn't understand economics, does he, when he calls himself a socialist?
Yeah, I think Bernie does not understand economics. I think most of his staff does not understand economics. And I would say most of the American people don't understand economics, and that's a shame. And I think that's one of the things that, FEE, my organization, is dedicated to doing, teaching people the fundamentals of basic economics and the virtues of freedom. Freedom can't solve all your problems, but embracing it can help you avoid a lot of the problems that we saw in nations in the 20th century that were quite tragic.
Yes, and you were right. I lived through, and I know George did too, the time when that wall did come down in Berlin, and that communism in Russia, their form of socialism, actually collapsed, and it was an economic collapse. And your article is just really poignant when Boris Yeltsin talks about going to that grocery store and how he just didn't understand how that could be just common everyday life for those of us here in America. That's the freedom you're talking about, isn't it? And it isn't brought about by socialism. What brings that kind of economic freedom?
I think what brings the freedom, I mean, we enjoy a constitution that does, allow a lot of things. And that's one of the things I think the American people are, should be more thankful for. A lot of the bad ideas happening around the world right now aren't happening here because we still do have that shield. But I think, we take so much of our wealth today for granted. And I don't know how to, really get that message through to people. In the history of the world, we have abundance like nobody else has ever really had. And yet we're angrier, than ever, it seems. And maybe that's part of human nature. Maybe it's just human nature just to not be grateful. Maybe it's part of our human nature to be envious. And I think we see that leaders sometimes tap into that anger, and they can benefit from that. But I think Americans, I don't really care where you are on that spectrum. Some have more than others, but we live in a time of plenty, and we need to understand that. Because if you look around the world today, a lot of places don't have that. And if you look at throughout human history, humans have not enjoyed that. And, somehow we got to get through to people that, we have it really good.
We do. And I think that Yeltsin really probably said it better. He said, when I saw those shelves crammed with hundreds, thousands of cans, cartons, and goods of every possible sort, for the first time I felt quite frankly sick with despair for the Soviet people. He later wrote in his article, his autobiography, Against the Grain, that such a potentially super rich country as ours, meaning Russia, has been brought to a state of such poverty. It is terrible to think of it. And the poverty that he was talking about was truly because of a system of government that just restricts choice, right? Is that just the bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, it restricted everything about your life, and basic economic choices. And what we saw, even there, like take East Germany, for example. The wall didn't go up immediately, right? And you see the creep of socialism. It was always going a little bit further because they saw the German people didn't want it, so the Germans were leaving. And they said, well, we can't have the best and brightest leaving, so they erect a wall and they decide we're going to shoot you if you cross it. Freedom's usually not lost overnight. It's something that it takes a long time, piece by piece. And then one day you wake up and things have changed. And the problem is usually people don't go back and say to freedom. They go and they make more restrictions and they limit more. And that's how you end up with a situation like you do like right now in Venezuela. There was a Nobel Prize winning economist that said the suffering would stop almost immediately if we just get out of the way and let the market system work again. But it's a power struggle now, and who knows where that's going to end.
And that's why we call it the free market, Jonathan Miltimore. Tell our listeners how they can read your article, how they can follow you, how they can get more information on fee.org.
Yeah, I just encourage all viewers and listeners, check out our website at fee.org. We publish every day. It's not just economics. We publish on a variety of topics, from self-improvement to entrepreneurship and all these other topics. And we do great videos, and give us a look. And there's a whole bunch of great content there that is both entertaining and educational.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest here, Jonathan Miltimore, on Conservative Commandos radio show. Take care and God bless.
Thank you both for having me on.
And we are coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on the internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7, TuneIn, American Political Radio, Leading Edge Radio, and now you can watch us on the AUN TV network in Northern California. George Landrith and I will be right back after this message.
Have you been leasing a property for your business or renting storage space? Are you tired of paying rent year after year? Call the experts at General Steel to own a building at up to 30% off now.
I'd been renting a building and paying someone else's mortgage, but General Steel showed me how I could own a space tailored to the needs of my business and for less than renting.
Call General Steel now at the number on your screen for our current building specials and to price your metal building system today.
My building's the dream I've had since finishing my house 14 years ago. I've been using it for a garage, workshop, and storage area for my tools and equipment, and I can't believe how great it turned out.
The economy is improving and the price of steel is expected to rise. Stop waiting. It could cost you thousands. Call General Steel now to see how you can own for less than you thought. Stop waiting to start your business or expand your operation. Call General Steel now.
Call 877-484-7002.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and the Conservative Commandos show here. I'm Sharron Engel. My co-host is George Landrith, and that about wraps up the show. George, would you thank our guests and tell our listeners how they can follow you?
Sure. Well, we had former Congressman and current doctor Paul Broun as a guest. Really awesome insights on the impeachment. We had Frank Vernuccio, and he gave us a lot of very interesting information on this whole idea of kind of where we're in politics today, with the middle finger of politics, so to speak. And then concluding with John Miltimore with fee.org, talking about socialism, how it just doesn't work and how it harms people. So I thought it was a great conversation all the way through. And then if people want to follow me, it's easy. ff.org is our website. And you can follow me on Twitter at glandrith. So that's Glandrith, Landrith, with the G in front.
Well, and I'm Sharron Angle. You can follow me at SharronAngle.com. But for right now, we got to run. We got to go. We'll take care. God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow on TV and on radio.